Hey YouTube, Poopslag here, and this is TurboFat, an open source puzzle game I made in Godot. Source code's linked below, and the game actually came out last October, but I've still been working on it since then, putting in a few little bug fixes and tweaks to game balance here and there. But most importantly, there's been this really obnoxious bug where sometimes after a puzzle, the game would just suddenly exit. And it was really hard to track down, but I finally figured it all out. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about some of the strategies and techniques I employed to figure it out, what the problem was and everything, so hope you'll stay tuned and maybe you'll learn something. So again, the bug was that after a puzzle, the game would sometimes, but very rarely, just suddenly exit. And the things that made this really hard to track down are when it exited, it wouldn't leave behind any logs saying what it was doing at the time, or like that there was a crash or an error or anything. And the other was it was so rare that I could go like weeks without seeing this bug, and then go to release the game to Steam, and it might happen like the first try, like the first puzzle exited, and it's like, what? I thought I fixed this bug, and then I would make some code changes and never see it again until like a month later, and it would suddenly happen. So it was just that rare, no clues. It was just so hard to track down. So I fixed some other simpler crashes specific people reported where I saw, for example, someone gave me a log file and it showed get tree was returning null for them sometimes. And I was like, I didn't know it could do that. You have code executing, even though it's not in the scene tree anymore. That's crazy. So I added little checks every time I call get tree. I first check like, are you still in the scene tree? Because if so, don't do any of that stuff. So that fixed some of that person's errors, but it didn't fix these ones that were affecting sort of everybody where it was just suddenly exiting. And those weren't logging anything. So again, it was very hard to track down. I did find though this Godot issue 85692 online. And this was the exact issue that I thought I was seeing, where it said on the scene change, sometimes the game just exits. And I was like, cool. How did you guys fix it? I used their fix and that didn't work. And I thought, well, if the animation player kicking off the scene change is causing a problem, let's have the animation player use call deferred so that the scene change won't happen until the next idle frame. Maybe that'll help. And that didn't help. And then I thought, what if the animation player then just sets like a variable? And in physics process, if that variable is set, I'll kick off the scene change. That has to work. And that didn't work. So I had like two other leads left. So I thought it could be related to saving because I often save after a puzzle's done because I need to save their scores. And it's always the puzzle scene. It's never anything else. So what is the puzzle scene doing that nobody else is? So my next major breakthrough was coming up with a way to duplicate this bug consistently. I remembered when I was a Java developer, we used this Abbott library, which could mouse click through buttons and humanly fast. And I was like, I need something just like that for Godot, right? So I wrote this autopilot script. It's an autoload singleton so it can run alongside all the other scenes in my game. And it detects what scene is currently loaded. So it'll say, well, if the splash screen is loaded, I need to click that play button. And it simulates a mouse click using this input.parseInput event. And then the result is it can like click through all the buttons in my game to get to a puzzle really, really fast, play through the puzzle by simulating some keyboard inputs, exit the puzzle, and then go back in. And it can do that over and over and over and over. I don't need to intervene, so I can leave it running overnight if I have to. So the end result is I can find out, like, even if this crash only happens like 1% or 0.1%, I can leave it running overnight, and it'll tell me, like, yeah, the bug's still there. And I finally know. So now that I could duplicate the problem consistently, I could bisect to figure out the root cause. And if you don't know what bisecting means, it's basically playing 20 questions and cutting the problem in half over and over to figure out, is it in this half of the game? Is it in this half of the game? What about this quarter? What about this eighth? What about this 16th? And you keep making it smaller and smaller pieces until you figure out, if I just pull out this little tiny piece, the game doesn't crash. So it has to be that piece, right? I don't understand why, but I know it's there. So for example, I started by testing the Steam version and I noticed it's way more susceptible to crashes for whatever reason. The way I'm exporting it, or just think about the version of like Godot Steam, I don't know, but that version crashes way more. So let's test on that version. What if I pull out so it doesn't save it all? Does it still crash? Yeah, that doesn't change anything. What if I pull out the creature visuals so it's not drawing any of the dudes? It still crashes, so it's not related to them, right? And I kept pulling out more and more parts until I figured out it's the viewport texture nodes. If the puzzle scene has no viewport textures, then the bug goes away. So for all the months it took me to track down the problem, the fix was actually pretty easy. I created this viewport purger node and he just sits inside a particular scene. You give him the paths of any viewport texture properties he needs to unassign, and then when he exits the tree, he loops through that list of paths and unassigns those properties. And yeah, I let the game run overnight, and not only does it not crash, but it also gave me reassurance that the game doesn't have any memory leaks, because after like thousands and thousands of puzzles that it ran, it was still had a pretty small memory footprint. So I also made some improvements to how cutscenes work. You can now click to advance them instead of using the keyboard, and if you hold a button on a gamepad, it'll fast forward through them the same way as holding down a key on the keyboard. The keyboard stuff worked because of something called echo events, where like if you hold down the R key on your keyboard, it prints out a string of R's, Well, gamepads don't have this sort of logic built in, so you got to write your own. Lastly, I made it so that if you're skipping through dialogue by holding a button, it'll skip through all the choices as well. Just, if you're a speedrunner or whatever, or sick of the cutscenes. So I nerfed the difficulty on a few levels here and there, like fruit salad was one I didn't expect to get complaints about, but there were a few people who were like, fruit salad, man, that level's impossible. I don't know how anybody can finish it. I looked at it closer, and the gimmick of it is the level ends after 40 lines, but it adds a row of garbage every 12 seconds. So the odd thing is, experienced players who play pretty quickly, they'll finish that level in like a minute and get like 5 rows of garbage and be like, what was that level? It was nothing. That was 5 rows. I didn't even notice. A novice player who plays really slowly and takes like 4 or 5 minutes to clear 40 lines, they're faced with like walls of garbage that they're like, how does anybody ever beat this? So I nerfed the amount of garbage you get, but it's still probably just like slightly on the heavy side, but I think it's more manageable. I also tweaked how the grading scale works. If you imagine a level that like 1,000 points is a perfect score, then that used to be the cutoff for master. It was like if you want an M rank, you got to get 1,000. And about a third of that, if you can get like 300 points, that's an S rank, and a third of that is a double A, and a third of that is an A, and a third of that is a B. And it was sort of mathematically beautiful, this logarithmic relationship between grades. But mathematical beauty aside, it was no fun for people at either extreme. If you were really, really, really good, it would be nice if you got a master rank. It was like irritating to say like, oh, 990, that was you were close, you didn't get it. And at the bottom, it sucked too because like I like the idea of giving out like, oh, you're just learning to have a B rank, but it was almost insulting if someone finished a level with like 15 points and it was like have a B. They know they did bad. You can just say like you got a bad grade, try again. So I squashed the grading scale where now you can play slightly suboptimally and you can still get a master grade. And I have people in the Discord who've gotten a master grade on every level, so it worked. And at the bottom end, like you do have to get a moderate amount of points to get a B. It's still not many, but like 50 or so. You can't get like 10 points and get a B anymore. So I also made the flip moves more lenient, where if you press both rotate keys, it flips the piece. But if you don't press them at the exact same times, then there would be times when like it would rotate once and then flip from the new spot that it rotated to. So now instead, there's 7 frames of leniency where it'll rotate once, but then it'll teleport back to where it was and flip from there. And it just makes certain moves a lot easier. So I originally had the game save when you beat a level and it would save your score, but I was really sensitive to the small amount of jitter that would introduce, so I deferred it instead to save during the next scene change. So everything goes black, it saves, and even if there's a few frames of lag, you can't tell if everything's black. This did result in one obnoxious side effect though, where someone complained about how they set a new high score and quit, and their score didn't save. Right, that's bad. So I now changed it so it does save immediately when you finish a level, but it saves in a separate thread, and it gets rid of the lag. So that's what we've been up to the last few months. We didn't add any new features or anything, just some spit and polish here and there, and getting that last crash out of the way. That was a big deal for me. I didn't want to have to say, like, go play my game on Steam. By the way, it crashes often. It's good to not crash. I also got this one new tool in my tool belt if I ever need it again, this automation thing, because sometimes you have these problems that just don't come up that often. So having a button you can click to say play my game for an hour and I'll be back, that's a great little helper. But that's gonna be the last major update for TurboFat. If bugs come up or I want to add a little thing here and there, I might do it, but I don't have any big plans. I do have one more video plan though, which is that I want to have a video about big picture, how I think TurboFat went, and the kinds of things I learned. Because I think I learned a ton about game design and game development over the last 4 years, and I really want to share that. So I hope you'll tune in. And until then, thanks so much for watching, and please let me know if you try out TurboFat. I'd love to hear what you think. Take it easy.